There's also a very close attention you have to language. I mean, most of the essays were very in one way what we in literary departments were taught as close readings, but they're of course very like they're not close readings in the sense that we use it in those departments, but definitely very close attention to the use of language. And there's one a footnote which really interested me, and I wish you had written a little bit more on that. You said that the Marathi was of course his mother tongue, but we must think of what his relationship to the English language was. Can we think of it as another tongue and not merely as a kind of subsidiary language where he's writing his theoretical books or where he's thinking around certain things? What was it that you meant by another tongue? Because we already know that our Indian languages already have in them the prevalence of the kind of degrade of inequality even in the tongue, in dialects and languages and the hegemonic relationships between them.
Yes, the notion of the tongue is actually borrowed from the great European French thinker Barbara Cassin, who speaks of both the idea of a language which is a kind of referential social name for the existence of a structure, an abstract structure. So English or any other language, Marathi, are names of structures, names of what Ferdinand Saussure called langue, something which exists only as an abstraction. And then there is the production of idiom, production of enunciations, and all enunciations are singular. They are, of course, clearly based on structures. So you can make enunciations in English, you can make enunciations in Marathi, and so on and so forth. To that extent, Marathi and English exist as the very structural possibility of making enunciations in them, but it's also the other way around. It's only when you make an enunciation that the language actually exists. So it is not just that you speak in Marathi or you speak in English. When you speak in English, English exists. And that's why literature to me is such an important paradigm, or gives me a chance, an opportunity to think of the existence of language for the first time. So when we read or listen or hear an enunciation in specific works of literature, it is not just it's a piece of literature in that language. It's when that language, when an utterance, an enunciation is produced, is created in a work of literature, then it is as if that production of tongue, the speech, the enunciation, in the literal sense of the tongue as we say tongue twister. So tongue is a twisting. Tongue is always a kind of twisting of the physical organ of speech and the abstraction, which is language itself, as involved in that very physical act. So that's why tongue twisting points towards always a possible tripping over words, a physical obstruction coming in the pure production of abstraction, which is language. So literature, in a way, is to make that very tongue twisting into something which is inaugural, which produces a new possibility for language itself. So then tongue twisting becomes actually, or a kind of twisted tongue becomes, in simple words, an idiomatic newness, something which is a newness, a singularity, makes the language itself exist for the first time. So it is as if English is thought of for the first time. So it is there, it was always there, we presupposed it. Again, along the same lines as a nation or a society, it was as if a natural fact that there is English, there is Marathi. But when it is used in specific ways, singular ways, then suddenly it hits us, and the thought strikes us like a lightning flash that, oh yeah, this is English. And literature is able to do that. Oh, this is Marathi. And sometimes it is a language which we cannot name, and yet we need to name it because it is as if a new language has suddenly confronted us.
And you think Ambedkar is
yes, and in a particularly interesting way, because apparently he's not writing works of literature. You know, there's a preface in not a preface, sorry, a dedication in his 1945 book, which I mentioned, what Congress and Gandhi did to them, where Aishwarya Kumar has written some excellent commentary on this, that Ambedkar says he always wanted to be a writer. That is, a literary writer, writing in the pure sense of literature, but he just didn't get the time. But then he is a writer, that we know. But he's a writer where, as if the passion of writing is constantly being put into a long detour, an unending detour of politics, of social commentary, of historical diagnostics, again and again. But that doesn't make him any less a writer in the radical sense of it being writing. That is, in the sense of writing being a twisting. At the same time, you see, we cannot make Ambedkar into an idiomatic, an idiomatic English speaker, insofar as his English language is concerned. Of course, he, as you know, he's also a fluent speaker of Urdu. Yeah, he spoke in Urdu in several election meetings. When
learned Sanskrit.
And it was learning Sanskrit, yes. In the 1930s, when he was speaking at several election meetings, he was speaking in Urdu. So he was a multilingual person in that sense. But then Marathi, we still take it for granted that it was an idiomatic reality for him. With English, it is interesting. He uses it with the kind of naturalness. Now I myself use the metaphor, but only as a metaphor of nature. A naturalness of someone who is so comfortable. It's absolutely the same with English language, which is again not peculiar to Ambedkar. A lot of people in that period who learned the language so well that they use it very naturally. But at the same time, because of the nature of his subjects, his themes, which have a great profundity in terms of objective discourses, of a kind of science, discourses of science, in the sense not of natural science but social science, yeah, of political philosophy or political thought, thinking about the constitution, legal science, jurisprudence. These are not apparently literary subjective pursuits. They are clearly objective pursuits. But in that objective pursuit, he also is able to bring out, well, how should I put it, a kind of ceremoniality, a kind of symbolic language is also used not ornately at all, on the contrary, very economically, and yet it's used with a pleasing formality. The formality is not a cold formality. English language is used with a ceremonial delicacy, and that itself is a literary quality. It's an amazing literary quality.
That's very interesting, and something we'd probably like to follow up.
Yes, yes. In fact, I want to do a project on what I call Ambedkar's words. It is already there in this book as an initial chapter, but I'd like to do a kind of glossary of Ambedkar after. It's of course an act of admiring imitation of a book that I like so much, which is Gilles Deleuze's book on Spinoza, which is called Practical Philosophy, which is a glossary of his concepts, glossary of Spinoza's words. So I'd like to do a similar exercise with Ambedkar, do a glossary of Ambedkar's words.
We'll be very happy to run that extract as well, and probably interview you when it comes out.